Mr. Mayor, can you hear us okay?
I sure can, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the time is 30 seconds to 5 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. As a reminder, the meeting will be live streamed and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page, just for everybody here and anybody listening. I'll move on to item 2, just a reminder to declare any pecuniary interests as they arise. We have nothing under item 3 for delegations, so I will move to item 4.1. I'll need a mover and a seconder for the minutes. I got it moved by Councillor Wolbett. Seconded by Paul. That the minutes be adopted by the Plympton-Wyoming Environmental Services Committee, and those confidential minutes of the closed session of the committee remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And that's for November 2nd. Was there any questions from the committee on those minutes? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. I will, we have anything in section 5, business arising from previous minutes. We have nothing. I'll look around quickly for the committee if there's anything from the last meeting to come up. Seeing nothing. So we'll move on to item 6.1. I'll need a mover and a seconder that the accounts as listed be received by the Plympton-Wyoming Environmental Services Committee. And that's for the water list and the sewer lists for October. Is there anyone to move that?
I could move that.
Your Mayor, seconder. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Was there any questions, concerns for those accounts? Mr. Mayor, anything from you?
Yeah, I've got a couple there, Mr. Chair. First of all, in that October payables, net tune for on-site training, setup fee and points part of the project. Is this just part of what we normally would have had? And is it that coming out now to pay them for that?
Through the chair, if I may. Just trying to find the lines, so just bear with me for a minute here. You said it's under the October water payable.
Yeah, I think it's not too far down, Adam, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, meter replacement and retrofits for the water meter project.
That could be, yes.
The one further up, on-site training setup fee, endpoints and water meter project. So they are invoicing for every step of the way. So it's the way that the invoices are coming in is they're invoicing for the tasks that are carried out, although those tasks were contemplated in the overall project.
Okay. And then I see another one for 355,000 at the bottom. That's another invoice from the project, I presume.
Yeah, whereas the first project was more for the setup and the training, the second invoice is for the actual work to retrofit and replace the water meters.
And just the final one on that, when did they leave our municipality? When are they done?
I'll actually ask our Director of Public Works to answer that through the chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
Yeah, through the chair, they're going to be leaving on December 15th.
Okay.
And possibly returning if we have enough bookings, they'll possibly returning for a week in January.
Okay. Yeah, I've had some people ask me that, Mr. Da Silva, so that's why I asked.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
No, that's all I got.
Councilor Wolbett, anything from you?
No, I have a question, but I'll ask it under new business, I guess.
I had nothing further. Okay, so the motion on the table is for the water and sewer list for October. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to nothing under staff reports or bylaws, so I'll jump to 9.1. I'll need a mover and a seconder for the minutes from the laws meeting in October 26, 2023. Is there a mover to get that on the table? Councilor Wolbett, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
And we do have, I believe, Mayor Atkinson and Mr. Spansky were at that meeting. If anyone has any questions, or Mr. Spansky, go ahead.
So just to give the committee a verbal update, I've attached the business case study that Laws is currently undertaking. Laws is considering reforming into a municipal service corporation. The biggest reason they're looking to do that is to better allocate their debt, but also to make them eligible for grants. As a municipal service corporation is partially owned by the municipality, some of that debt load would be still borne by the municipality, but it would not be done. Whereas they would have to come to each town for a set allocation of that debt. It would be done through a different manner. Additionally, the municipal servicing corporation is eligible for grants, where Laws in its current form is not. It would also allow for some reforms amongst the board to allow more flexibility for the municipalities to appoint whom they see fit, which means they could continue to appoint politicians if that is the chairperson's wish, or they could appoint technical staff if council chose to do so. So we'll be providing continued updates on the matter, as it is very important that the change occur. The town of Plympton-Wyoming wants to continue to grow at its current rate. We will need to see improvements from Laws, and those improvements are very much attached to being able to get grants for some of those projects. So it's an important project for the town to keep track of, and I'm sure the Director of Public Works and the Mayor will be doing so moving forward.
Thank you, Adam. So is there any, Paul, you have any questions? No. Councilor Vet?
No, sir.
Mayor Atkinson, anything from you?
Nothing, no.
So if it's on the table, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? That's carried.
Chair, I'd like to draw your attention that there was a supplementary agenda with a staff report under.
We will jump over to the supplementary for 7.1 report. It was the 2024 proposed waste collection and disposal budget.
Yep. Motion for the
Motion there.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
thanks, Nicole.
So I will need a mover and a seconder for the report by Mr. Sapansky, CAO dated December 5th, 2023, regarding the 2024 proposed waste collection and disposal budget be received, endorsed, and forwarded to council for approval. Can I have someone to move that to the table? Paul, seconder, Mr. Mayor. So we did receive that supplementary report in advance. Is there anything you wanted to add, Mr. Benfield?
Not specifically. I apologize for getting to the committee late. It's been one of those months apparently. But to summarize the request, we're suggesting that the current fees remain the same. We are starting to get data back from CMO in regards to our grant. And when we project that grant out over a full year, it looks like if we carried on with the current fees, that we would have a small ability to transfer a small amount to reserves. So we're suggesting maintaining those fees as is, as there is a number of initiatives to move forward in the next couple of years in regards to waste collection, including the possible construction of a waste transfer station down the road, and further changes to the Blue Blocks program, which could change how we bill our waste collection. So that is why staff has suggested to leave it as is for today.
I will open it up for any questions from Mr. Spansky. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything?
No, I think it's, I found it very self-explanatory. So, yeah, Mike, thank you for that report.
Councilor Vet?
Two questions I have on it is, this is a user pay system now, and my understanding, I know I've been involved in this over the last few years, but we did have a substantial amount of money in reserves in the waste collection, probably 100,000 plus, that I can recall. We always seem to be putting some in. Now, it looks like in this report, another 50,000 possibly be transferred over. Now, I guess what my thoughts are that since this is a user pay system, I'm okay with the rates, maintaining the rates. I think that's a great thing to do, and it looks like it's creating a bit of little more money, but the money that's in there, since it's not, it's user pay money. So I thought we should be using that money up to adjust rates up or down. I know $100,000 is not a whole lot in the size of the population, but I just hate seeing user pay money go, a bunch of their money going into reserves and not adjusting their bill accordingly up and down. I know, Adam, Mr. CIO, that you had said that we just weren't sure where we're gonna be at with this whole transition. And there may be some costs to this in the end. So I guess, make a long story short, is this kind of why you're just kind of holding back these reserves and not using them up? Because I don't believe that money's used for doing your, not doing other things like water, sewer, or anything else. That's strictly
Absolutely not.
meant for waste and recycle.
Yes, the direction of Town of Plympton-Wyoming Council has always been that waste collection is a user pay system. Therefore, the fees collected as part of the system stay within that system. So those funds can only be used in regards to waste collection and disposal. Yes, we're projecting a small reserve transfer at the end of the season. However, we only have 6 months of data to go off of from our new recycling program. The recycling program does have a lot of areas where a CMO could draw back our grant if they find our recycling is too dirty or not meeting their standards. So we're just not confident that that projected reserve transfer can be necessarily maintained. So instead of reducing the rates in the short term, we felt leaving the same is the best. If we do see a long-term trend where those costs are more than covered, that's something this committee could consider in the future as a reduction in rates. However, if we reduce the rates, it may increase the amount you need to obtain from council or from other means to build a waste transfer station in the future. That's a discussion we've had a lot. We currently pay the city of Sarnia to dispose of our yard waste, and the city of Sarnia has suggested that that is not obtainable or sustainable into the future. And that is why we are putting money away into reserves so that we can develop a waste transfer station specifically for yard waste and other materials in the future in case the city stops taking our waste in.
I think, yeah, okay, that's great. Second thing, the electronic e-waste bucket out there at Reese's Corners. If I'm looking at this correctly, we're showing a loss of about $1,500. In brackets, that mean there's a loss? That mean there's a gain?
Through the chair, if I may, in the portion of the budget you're looking at, the bracketed materials are actually a revenue offsetting your expense.
Great, okay, I did want to make sure we weren't losing money on that because that's a government controlled e-waste bucket, not ours, so, okay, great, that's good. Oh, second part of that, if you don't mind me asking, with this whole changeover in waste, are they going to take total control of that too? Or will it be just left much the same as it is?
The e-waste, sir?
Yeah, because we are handling, right? Your guys are having to handle, take stuff, put them in the bucket.
There is currently no plans to change the e-waste program. Public Works will continue to oversee it. And it will continue to be in partnership with waste management companies.
Okay, so like, I guess my point is there, if we've got a gain of $1,500 and our guys are out there having to move that stuff all the time, really, that excess money should be going into your Public Works Department, should it not?
If staff are filling out their timesheets correctly, a small portion of their time should be going against this budget and should be reflected in there.
Okay, because I know they have to move it over, right? It has to be moved over and that takes time and so, okay, thank you.
Anything else, Council? Further. I just have one thing to just building off what you said, Mr. Spansky. So I guess when we're talking the money is tied to the targets, that's more so on the user side and educating them that they have to clean their bottles and stuff. It's not up the subcontractor. It's not something they're doing. It's just what they're picking up.
Correct. So Marcotte would have, the only control Marcotte as their subcontractor would have in regards to waste is if they notice things in the blue box or in our garbage stream that aren't supposed to be there, they're supposed to tag it and leave it. If they don't do that, especially in the recycling, it could result in us having what they refer to as dirty recycling, which could reduce our value of our grant down the road.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, so we have that motion on the table to accept the report, or receive the report, endorse it, and forward to council. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. We will jump back to the regular agenda. And move on to item 11. I will be calling for a mover and a seconder for the correspondence relating to recommended reading and routine approval and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution, be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Environmental Services Committee and filed accordingly. And that's for the Jacobs monthly report for October. Do I have someone to move that for me? Mayor Atkinson, seconded by Paul. I'll open that up for any questions or discussions. We do have Jacobs here as well. Mr. Mayor, anything from you?
No, nothing at this time.
Councilor Wolvet?
Don't very good report. You you almost need to be an engineer to read it. It's pretty accurate, pretty sophisticated, but I do read it all and yeah, it's a good report.
No, the numbers look good. No further questions. I do have one question before I call for the vote. For the Devonshire call, when we're talking about one of the gas services, and like there was an issue there with it going through it. Is that a cost recovery repair for us? Or is that like what happened there?
Hello. Went out. They plugged sewer lateral. It was determined after digging that a new gas line had been drilled right through the actual clean out stack. It was repaired. And I'm not sure who's paying for that, but
Yeah, through the chair. The issue is if the clean out isn't located, like a lot of these gas services are installed by horizontal directional drilling. And if the clean out isn't located, then they do happen to get hit. So cost recovery for that can be difficult with Enbridge. And in my experience, almost impossible. It's something that we could follow up with them and discuss with them, but they may come back and say, well, we didn't know the cleanup was there. So they, how are we supposed to avoid it?
it was also found that the as-built drawings showed that clean out probably a good 40 feet away from where it actually was. So that was another issue that came up with that.
So in other words, we will be paying for it.
All right. Thank you. That answers my question. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. So we'll move on to item 12. Before I open it up new business for the committee, I will start. I think we've got some from staff. So 12.1 is the water meter reading system update. Is that coming from? Yeah. Go ahead.
Through the chair, as of today, that project is 81% complete. There are 651 outstanding meters that need to be replaced. The issue that we're having right now is twofold. About half of them are water meter pits that were discovered during investigation. And many of those pits are not accessible, so they have to be excavated in order to replace the meter at obviously an increased cost. So we'll be reviewing that over the course of the winters and trying to determine what the best direction on that is going forward. The rest of them are either pending or soft refusals. So soft refusals are where the residents have received the full complement of correspondence, but still have not responded. So that's another thing that we're reviewing internally to see how we can convert some of those soft refusals into bookings.
Any questions for Paul about that piece? Mayor Atkinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. De Silva. So these water pits, sorry, the pits where we figure the water meter is, if a resident or an organization has one, should they be notifying you right away to get on the list to have that looked at?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe, and unfortunately, I don't have a ton of background with this project, but I believe these are being identified in the field. Once someone books an appointment and Neptune arrives at the site, they realize that the meter isn't within the house, that it's out at the property line.
So Neptune will pick up on that and they'll add that name to the list or whatever.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, Councilor Wolbett?
No, I'll ask mine under new business, but I'll keep it separate from that.
No questions, no. Thank you, Paul. We'll move on to 12.2, verbal update on the boil water advisory that was issued on the lakeside. Is that Mr. Spansky or? That's also Paul.
Today.
Through the chair, just to provide a summary on the events that occurred on November 30th at approximately 8 a.m. A contractor ruptured a water main on Egremont Street at the Elm subdivision. Jacobs responded and isolated the location, but we continue to receive calls from residents west of the break, which was odd to us because they should have been receiving water from Van Daamen. So Jacobs investigated the potential for a second break and they determined that that wasn't the case. They then went to a pressure reducing valve at the intersection of Lakeshore Road and Van Daamen and found that only the bypass, the 2-inch bypass was operating. The actual PRV itself was not operating. So then Jacobs notified Spills Action Center and the Plympton Health Unit. Laws then came to site and confirmed that the PRV was not operational. We were then advised by the health unit that they wanted to issue a boil water advisory. So town staff, volunteer firefighters, and Jacob staff hand delivered notices to all affected properties. Water service was restored at approximately 6:30 p.m. that same day. And after 2 sets of samples that were taken subsequently after this incident, the boil water advisory was lifted on Sunday, December 3rd. And again, hand delivered notices were provided to the residents. We're performing an investigation on the matter to determine what the root cause was, and we plan to follow up with a thorough staff report.
Thank you, and I will thank Mr. De Silva for taking charge on that advisory delivery. It was really well organized with staff and volunteers. It was good. I will open up for any questions based on that verbal update. Paul, anything for you? No questions. Councilor Wolbett?
I guess the only question I have, we had no negative sample whatsoever. There was nothing in the samples that violated anything, correct?
Clean and clear, so.
Yeah, so we never did have any bad readings. Thank you, sir. So I had.
So and just to give the committee a higher level of comfort, if your water main unexpectedly and uncontrolledly drops below 20 PSI, that's an adverse event under the Safe Drinking Water Act, which requires us to report it to SAC and usually results in a boil water advisory as a precautionary measure. So there was no proof of significant contamination in the main. However, given the unexpected nature of the break and the unexpected loss of pressure to a large section of water main, that led to charge to a boil water advisory by the medical officer of health.
I guess just one other comment, and I don't know why, because I seen the advisories. I live out off Lakeshore, very clear was not in our area, but I got phone calls, including my own granddaughter from it said, you guys better not drink the water. I said, why? You got a boiled water advisory up there. I mean, we very quickly said, no, it's not in our area. But other people had called, 3 other people. And I said, we'll go back and read look at the mapping and stuff like that. But some people were getting confused. They thought it was all of Plympton-Wyoming. So I don't know if you guys heard that or not, but certainly once you told them it was not where the area was no issue, but there was some confusion around where it was.
Maybe some of that confusion was, that evening it was reported on the London News that it was Plympton-Wyoming had a boil water advisory. And not a specific area in Plympton-Wyoming, so that could have been some of the lead of the cause of the misunderstanding there.
I heard that same thing was reported on the London News, Plympton-Wyoming, yeah.
And I do know there was a lot of chatter in the local community groups on social media and stuff, and for the most part, there was a lot of self-correcting by residents, which was good to see, referring to the mapping, and of course, the notices on the doors certainly helped.
Also, EMO's website reports any emergencies throughout Ontario. We made that website. And the title was Boil Water Advisory, Plympton-Wyoming, but when you clicked on the link that said in this area, so it's easy for people to get confused when the media's and the province is reporting it in such a manner that kind of does not give the full scope of the situation.
It is, and my comment would be that when you're doing your investigation, you know, I think it's something you should just touch on, because regardless of what kind of emergency it is, you kind of want the message going out to be very clear what it is and where it is. So I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying that maybe that's something you can talk about in the investigation, whether it was a train derailment or a truck accident. It needs to be, people need not be confused during an emergency. If it was, you know, it was a real emergency.
Thank you for that, and we agree 100%. That's why our communications, the county communications through the medical officer health and their emergency manager were clear. However, once far-flung media and provincial agencies got a hold of it, it did not end up as clear. So, but you're absolutely correct, Councillor Wolfen.
Thank you for that.
Mayor Atkinson, did you have anything related to that verbal update? Any questions?
Oh, no questions, just a comment that I thought it was very well handled and good teamwork, and congratulations and thanks to everybody that took part in it.
Yeah, agreed. So I will move on to just general new business if there's anyone on the committee.
New business, yeah. I just have one thing, and it's just minor, but I've received 2 phone calls on it. One, a fellow at the Lion Falls connection. Now, I don't know if they changed out his meter or they didn't, but he called me and said his meter was turning, you know, the small gauge going around there. And I said, well, you better go check, you know, see if you got a leak in your toilets or whatever. He said, I've checked everything, there's no leak. So my advice to him was to call town hall immediately in the morning. So, and there was one other person told me the same thing, that they had witnessed their secondhand, I guess I'll call it their secondhand going around. Have you heard anybody heard any other people complaining about that? No, I went down and looked at mine to make sure, no, it was stopped dead, like. But that would tell me you had a leak if that's going around. Yeah.
A good investigation out of that is have them turn their valve off before their meter. If that meter's turning, it is registering. If you turn that ball valve or gate valve off, it should stop. If it doesn't stop, that valve could be leaking by and it's still leaking, but that's a very good way to check it.
Yeah.
And then another part of that, if you leave it off for an hour, like you leave your water off for an hour or so, when you turn that valve on, you can physically hear the rush of water that's making up that leak. So it's a good way to just get a gauge of, you know, something's leaking quite a bit, because a lot of water had to go by to make that up.
I haven't followed up with him, but I'm going to do that tomorrow, because I'm curious what, you're supposed to call town hall the next morning. I don't know whether he did or not, but the other fellow did call me back and say his had stopped. So I don't know what his problem was, something to do with his hot water tank, but so I'll get back to this guy. So I'm kind of curious what he found out. He said he watched it for a long time and it was turning. Well, you got a leak. But it's a fairly modern home over here on the north side of Wyoming. So, okay, I just wondered if anybody else had heard. I don't know if they put a new meter in or whether they. I thought he had told me to change the outside part, maybe not the inside part.
Any meter over 15-year-old just had a retrofit. Any meter under 15-year-old was replaced.
Yeah, so he would have had it replaced. Okay. All right, thanks. All right, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Atkinson, anything under new business?
No, I have nothing, Mr. Chair.
Nothing for me. Nothing. All right, so I will, we have nothing under closed, so we will move to section 14. I'll also need a mover and a seconder. That the Plympton-Wyoming Environmental Services Committee regular meeting be adjourned until the next regular meeting to be held February 1st, 2024 at 5 p.m. I want to move that. Councilor Roulette, Mayor Atkinson, second. All in favor? Carried.